This show is strictly for educational purposes. The opinions expressed on the show are personal to the individuals appearing in the show and not those of Thinking Tree Ecoholics Private Limited. The show is not intended to offend or defame any individual, entity, caste, community, race, or religion, or to denigrate any institution, person, living or dead. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
Hello and welcome to Ecoholics Thinking Tree series. Today we have with us very esteemed guest Dr. Santosh Kumar Sahu. Today we'll discuss about the evolving energy landscape in India, opportunities and challenges. Dr. Sahu currently working as an assistant professor in IIT Madras and he was previously associated with Madras School of Economics as an assistant professor. He also received the fellowship in the name of Raghuram Rajan from National Bureau of Economic Research. Welcome, sir. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. SHRIVASTAVA. Thank you for calling me.
Today, environmentalists over the decades have been trying their best to convey the masses the reality of climate change. Hundreds of conferences, associations, exchanges, agreements could not bring about the change that this pandemic has brought on the environment. Today, we will discuss about the economic impacts of COVID on India's power sector. To begin with, sir, we see positive reports of significant fall in air and water pollution very often after the advent of COVID. This change may be temporary. However, has it caused any economic benefit to India or the world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In fact, there has been a couple of research has been already published on the positive impact of environment due to the lockdown. I mean, it will be difficult to understand from the COVID perspective because the air quality has improved because of the lockdown, because the limited economic activity that happened throughout the world. And if you look at the images from, internationally, when you look at the images from the NASA, then you can see that the first positive impact was seen from Wuhan itself, because the lockdown of Wuhan in China created a, air quality index to be better off. And China is actually suffering from climate change impacts and heavy, air pollutions. So this pandemic has led to in air quality in all around the world, not because of the pandemic, but because of the economic lockdown. Right. So let us be very clear about because what happens is many times the misunderstanding comes that because of the pandemic the air quality has gone up. It is because of the slowdown of the economic activity. Yeah. And predominantly because of the factories not being operative, and then the roadways are not being operative. But if you look at the Indian case, I mean, I'll speak from two perspectives. One is from the ecological economics perspective, and one is from the economics perspective, right? Now, if you look at the Indian perspective, yes, the lockdown have resulted limited the emissions, because mostly the factories and roads are shut down for a long time. Now, if you think in terms of India, for example, take Delhi or any major city in India. They usually involve in a blanket of smoke at this particular time because the farmers start burning the crop.
Yes.
And we always have that, for example, you remember the odd even formula that came in between to deal with the crisis of the air pollution. Right? Now, this climatic condition tends to correct itself when the season changes, right?
Yes.
And but in this last few months, Delhi has not experienced that kind of a problem because economic activities were completely shut down. Because from the March onwards, the Prime Minister has declared for the economic shutdown to kind of deal with the COVID. And therefore, what has happened, the air quality is definitely better off. For example, in the northern India, you can see a downfall in the PM10. PM10 meaning particular matter to 10 and 2.5 had reduced, which is a very good sign in terms of a healthy environmental ecosystem because the air quality has become better. Now, beyond improvements of the outdoor air quality, are we also thinking about indoor air quality?
Yes.
See, what has happened is outdoor air quality has definitely become better because economic activity has slowed down. There is no emission, there is no transportation, there is no consumption of fossil fuels, there is no dependency on fossil fuels, so on and so forth. But what has happened is this pandemic has made all of us to stay at home.
Yes.
So if you take a statistics of how much our people stay at home, that is drastically gone up.
Go on. Yes.
So therefore, the hypothesis here is the outdoor air pollution has effectively become better, but probably the indoor air pollution has become worse because now people are, and India doesn't have space. We are actually in a space crunch. We are high density population in a geographical location, and of course, population is one factor which we all know that we are densely populated. So the outdoor air pollution has become better, but indoor air pollution has probably become worse. So we have to think in that way. Now, the third thing, which is equally important, is because this question also linked to water and air quality both. Now, during the pandemic, what is happening is we are coming up with a lot of waste that comes from the medical side, that comes from the health side.
Yes.
So waste management has become a larger issue, not today, but it will cumulatively become larger issue tomorrow.
Yes.
Uh, the the waste that is generated through PPE, the waste that is generated through medicines, the waste that is generated to the patients and the hospitals, if we are not managing correctly at this point of time, it is going to become more difficult because they are going to add negative externality to both air quality and water quality.
Water.
So we should be very happy thinking that yes, Narmada has become clean because no economic activity has happened, but it has a negative impact on the indoor air quality. And policymakers have to think once we open up the economy, what will happen to Narmada again?
Yes.
Can we reduce the pollution externality to the water pollution of Narmada? Because we are again going to open up all the industries which are simply throwing their sewage to the river. So it's in a short run, yes, the air quality has gone up, which is a good thing. But yes, we have to very carefully analyze and think in terms of the outer air quality, and when we open up the economy, how we are again managing with the understanding of ecosystem services.
It should not be very temporary in nature, but it should be we have taken some lesson, or it's better to take some lessons from the pandemic time. And COVID-19 has presented significant demand and supply side challenges for India's transport and power sectors. Challenges starting from liquidity constraint and supply shortages to shift in consumer demand and preferences. How do you see the recovery trajectory?
Yeah, as you we ended the conversation of the first question from the learning from the pandemic, right? So that we basically look at the temporary solutions, and we realize the problems, but generally we don't learn from any instance, may it be economic crisis of the 2007-8 or pandemic or internal conflict. Now, but at this stage, yes, we have to be very, very careful because this pandemic has taught a lot of possibility for an economy like us, particularly the emerging economy like India. And your question on transport sector is equally important because this is one of the sector which India has the potential, not only in terms of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, but also upgrading the technology. So India's transport sector has the potential to reduce CO2 and become energy efficient because we are not yet energy efficient from the transport sector because it has a larger demand for fuel. Now the question, how do we achieve it, right? So we must target or focus to invest on least cost energy solutions for the transportation sector. That is first. We have to support the resilient and the secure energy systems. Third, we have to prioritize efficient and competitiveness among the industries which are participating in India to come up with new type of vehicular systems. And also we have to promote social environmental equity in terms of understanding the negative externalities of energy consumption that comes through the roadways. Not necessarily roadways, transportation sector definitely combine roadways, railways, and waterways and airways. So in some cases we are efficient, but in majority cases we are inefficient. So what we can do, we can actually potentially invest on the, for example, electricity vehicle.
Yes.
Right. So states like Tamil Nadu have already invested on that. There are a heavy investment going on in the two-wheeler segment because the two-wheeler segment. I mean, again, we have to understand from the disaggregate level, not on the aggregate level.
Yes.
Right? Let us not have a policy at an aggregate level of what happens to the roadways, because roadways combination of multiple things.
Multiple things.
For example, you cannot have complete innovation on a tractor because that is the minimum requirement for a farmer. The farmer cannot adapt to the new technology, but you can have the new technology in the two-wheeler segments.
Yes.
Or let us look at Bombay, what they have done, or Mumbai, what they have done. They promoted the CNG in the autos. And probably Mumbai is the only place where you have CNG auto run completely. Or Delhi is competing with
That
Mumbai,
is
right? Now, unfortunately, other metros are still using petroleum products.
yes.
So basically, the acceptability and adaptability of the technology, which is important from a policy perspective.
Very true.
So now, because already it is tested, at least in Chennai, that people are using electricity vehicles, and fortunately, through nuclear power plants, we are becoming energy efficient, and we are also becoming energy surplus economy. Unlike the old days that were dependent only on hydropower power, and then we have deficit and we were to purchase from different states. In fact, Tamil Nadu is a great case. Tamil Nadu used to be energy deficit state. Now it's an energy surplus state because of the nuclear power plant.
Yes.
And then when you have an electricity motor vehicle, then it is easy to reduce emissions, become more efficient, or also become lesser dependent on the import of oil burdens. So therefore, the clean energy should be a major driver for Indian economic recovery. Because see, what is happening is we're again starting from the scratch after the pandemic. So if we look at the clean energy as a major driver of Indian strategy to manage the fuel policy, that will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also it will encourage new possibilities of employment.
Yes, indeed.
Right, so the supply chain mechanism will begin. That means when you have an electric motor vehicle, then you create new employment potentials for a lot of youth who are probably willing to participate in the production of automobile segments, and probably we can become one of the most efficient producers of the two-wheeler segments.
So yes.
Right? So these opportunities are there for India, not today, but it used to be there. But we have to realize at least today, because we also signed, we are also party to the international community in terms of reducing our emissions. In IPCC, we are basically we are positively telling that we are definitely going to reduce emissions, and this sector particularly can have more scope. Not only the industrial sector, which is always considered to reduce emissions, but transport sector is equally important. Because what it can happen is we can create an automotive export hub through this if we can come up with an efficient technology. Let's talk about the battery also, right? The battery segments, which is used heavily in the transportation mechanism, right? Can we come up with a better battery? Because battery allows us to save energy.
Yes.
Because our energy saving potential itself is very less.
Very less, yes. And
Right,
we are
so
generating at a less space also. Yes.
yeah, of course, yes. So can we have different technology where we can use the battery in different climatic conditions? Because India is also, very sensitive to the climatic condition, because we have the desert, then we have the snowfall areas, we have the rainy areas. So we have different climatic zones within ourselves, and we have to develop batteries which can sustain in all kind of ecosystem. Right?
Yeah, India itself is a subcontinent, so we have different kinds of topography and the climate. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Since you were talking,
Yeah.
Since you were talking about power sector efficiency, India's government Power for All Vision 2022 aims to provide access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. However, a slew of challenges stand in way of achieving this target, like fossil fuel derived energy generation, which accounts for 80% of country's generation, along with transmission and distribution issues. What is your take on Power for All?
See, in fact, this is multiple dimensions. In fact, gradually researchers are looking at redefining poverty. So poverty has been defined as in terms of consumption poverty or income poverty, that all of us know. But if you look at the energy poverty, how does it look like? Right. So the moment we say power for all, that essentially means we do not have power for all, right? The other hypothesis is because we are not able to distribute or give power to all citizens, all households of the economy, we are coming up with a policy on power for all, which itself is an interesting element of looking at the energy poverty standpoint. I mean, yes, I'm 100% agreeing on the vision of 2020 of, you know, making power for all, because power is the minimum requirement as today's life. And let us look at again in the context of pandemic, what has saved us from the pandemic to be more worstly affected is the power sector. The undisrupted supply of power and technology has helped us to cope with the pandemic, because now everything has become digital. Things have become digital because we have power supply with us. Now there should not be an inequality of power distribution, at least for the necessity use. I'm not talking about the heavy use. For example, industries demand high power compared to a household, but every household should at least have the possibility of enjoying the goods and services called power or electricity. So this policy for 2020 is definitely a great vision. In fact, this vision is also probably documented in one of the writings of Professor APJ Abdul Kalam, when he spoke about the vision 2020, that power should be available for everybody. And now if you look at the data, for instance, now the government of India has set a target of installing 175 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2020. Sorry, 2022.
Yes.
Which includes 100 gigawatt from solar, 60 gigawatt from probably wind, and 10 gigawatt from biopower, and 5 gigawatt from small hydropower. Now, this was on newspaper long back when the report came out in terms of the target of the government of India. Now, let us understand from each component. So, the first, the investment is going to become in the renewable energy requirements, which is definitely going to help us in again minimizing the negative externality of emissions. The second is from solar. That means the government of India is actually putting a lot of emphasis on solar photovoltaics,
Yes.
which means a lot of university institutions and R&D houses can get benefit because they have the potential to come up with better versions of solar PVs. Can we stop importing solar PV, make solar PV as an independent industry in India? Because today what is happening, almost every economy are capable of installing solar PV and get the solar energy to reduce the dependency on the oil market.
Yes.
Because oil market is very sensitive, beginning from 1962. And it is repetitively very unpredictable, because the oil market has been kind of driver of economic growth in particular economy who are exporting, and becoming a problematic for other economy those are importing.
Yes, indeed.
Right? Now the third point, if you look at from the wind generation, because as I also told you, India has a mixed biodiversity with itself. So we have wind power, we have solar power, we also have tidal power. So I'm a little bit not happy why tide didn't came as one of the potential power generating elements. So India should also look at how to use tidal power to come up with more energy requirements. Now the fourth component is 10 gigawatt is targeted from the biopower. Now biopower essentially comes from different component of food waste, and it has been there. If you historically look at, then we used to have something called a gobar gas, right?
Yes.
Cow dung gas used to be one of the elements which every household potentially had at a particular point of time, which means we have the potential to deal with the minimum energy requirement from the renewable energy resources, which essentially can drive the economic growth, because we can again go back and generate employment from this. We can reduce the emissions. We can make economy self-dependent, and also the policy says 5 gigawatt from small hydropowers, which is basically again increasing in terms of the renewable potential, not depending on the coal or not depending on the petroleum product to burn it and create electricity for use.
Yes.
So this is definitely going to help in terms of in terms of except in terms of adaptability and uses of electricity for all the households in Indian economy. Because if you link it with the Ujjwala scheme, for instance, right? Now, if we don't give electricity or power to all households, and why do we think power in terms of only electricity?
Yes.
Energy to all households, then we have to also meet the demand for households to supply the gas cylinders, LPG cylinders. So our demand for LPG cylinder has gone up
Yes.
because when Ujjwala is reaching all the households, essentially what is happening is they're also consuming LPG.
Yes.
So the LPG demand has gone up. Now we have to somehow manage in such a way that the substitution has to be done such a way that the renewable energy can substitute the non-renewable energy resources. So, for example, we can also come up with solutions like rooftop systems for solar installations. So many of the service sectors and banks and hotels have done it. Can we also do it at the household level? Can government give? Of course, subsidy is already given for the for the solar power. But the problem is on the batteries again. I come back to the batteries because you produce electricity for free and by subsidies from government of India. But how do you save it?
Yes.
And the lifetime economy of battery is not very efficient.
No.
So battery needs to be changed, upgraded based on the uses and other activities.
Indeed.
So when we have a policy for power for all, it has to be addressed again from the bottom up approach. Because what happens is the way a Rajasthani household cook, not similar to the way an household in Orissa is cooking. So your composition of fuel are different, your demand for fuel are different, your usage of electricity is different. And in fact, these days many researchers are coming up with understanding the night light
Yes.
as a proxy for development,
Yes. Seriously.
right?
Great point. Yes.
So, and unfortunately, if you look at the night light picture taken from the satellites, I don't think we have a convincing night light with us.
Yes.
So the Ministry of Urban Development has come up with different models and bylaws from 2016 onwards, just to look at the data of how the power for all has started, and they are planning to do it. But the emphasis should be given at state level also. That means each state should also come up with different policies to converge with the central policies of power for all. That is going to make us more economical viable. For example, look at the undivided Andhra Pradesh when they were giving free electricity to the farmers. Now, when you give free electricity to the farmers because they are not able to buy it from the market rates, and it is required because they're already in poor, they're in poverty, right? Now, if power for all is given to rest of the India, then obviously the potential to produce will go up. Probably we can encourage more of these small industries, right? Micro industries, tiny industries at household levels. Yeah. So anything, if you have any clarification or yes, before I wind it up. So also, we can accept some FDI in this.
Yes.
Foreign direct investment, right? In automatic route, we can bring for the renewable energy sectors. Because what is happening is there are a lot of firms which are ready to invest on solar and wind investment. So can we also look at in terms of bringing of FDI in the renewable investment in energy? Because we also need investments. I mean, the government cannot come up with its own investment to kind of fulfill the 2022 goal of power for all. So one is we need international cooperation, we need international investment, not only finance but also technology.
Technologies. And that too affordable.
Yes, of course, affordable technologies and viable technologies, which we can replicate, we can modify, we can reinstall, and we can do typically reverse engineering, right?
I think International Solar Alliance played a catalyst role in, and India is also putting effort into that along with France.
Yes, that's true.
A very great point, sir, because in order to become $5 trillion economy, energy is an important sector.
Of course, yes, because we cannot afford to deal with the volatility nature of the oil imports.
Yes. Since the crude oil prices are historically low due to fall in global demand, how do you analyze India's reaction to this situation so far, and how can India best utilize this opportunity to have the low oil prices since we are the net importer?
This actually links with the previous question, interestingly, right? Even all the questions are interlinked because we started talking about the larger ecosystem, then we came to the one particular sector like the transportation sector. Then we are talking about the energy which is used as a in the transportation sector, and of course, interestingly, India is known as a coal economy. I mean, if you look at from the industrial economics viewpoint, then India is known as coal economy because majority of the industries are dependent on coal for production purpose. That doesn't mean we don't require oil, because oil is one of the most important policy variable. I must tell you that when when 1 rupee increases in, see, for instance, let's say 5 rupees increase in edible oil and 5 rupees increase in petrol. These are two different things, right? Nobody want to talk about 5 rupees increase in the edible oil, even if the increase had got 5 rupees, but 1 rupee increase in petroleum product has a direct impact on the policy level. So it destabilizes the political ecosystem as well, not only the economic ecosystem, right? Now, if you look at the pandemic, for example, let's start with the pandemic. So the ongoing impact of COVID-19 gains from the lower crude oil price got offset in the large extent, okay, because mostly what has happened, economic activity did not function. So the demand side problem is happened because a lot of economy are not dependent on the crude oil. Now it is important to note that the crude oil fall in global prices is not a pure positive supply shock, which benefits the oil consumers like India, right? It is not a pure supply shock. It is because of the COVID-19, not because of the international competitive pricing of oil. So it's a short-run phenomenon, but also as a result of the weak demand-induced shock, and then therefore the positive impact has growth somehow offset. So what has happened is the reduction in the coal price is not definitely for the international competitive price, but also the economy has slowed down and many economies are shut down. And in fact, the oil importing economies have shut down their economic activity due to the pandemic. So it's a very short-run economic phenomenon. But still, there is a benefit for India as an economy, because the benefit is to probably help the Indian fiscal position. Because the Indian fiscal position will be limited as tax collection to the government from the petroleum sector got affected due to the slowdown period of the COVID-19 situation. Now, we are also running a current account deficit, and hence we will gain from lower crude oil prices as oil importer bill will come down. So if we can import more at this particular time, we are paying less, and we have a problem of current account deficit. So probably that can a little bit help us in terms of rearranging the equation of current account deficit into a different perspective, because we are definitely going to pay low. But the question is how much oil we can actually import. Or in other words, do we have adequate storage capacity to purchase at a lesser rate and keep as an inventory for tomorrow's consumption, right? So that is the biggest question that we have to think about. And for that matter, how many refineries are there in India which can come up with energy derivatives? So interestingly, this also calls for an investment in this segment in India. Not only in India, also in the friendly economies where India is doing overseas foreign direct investment, OFDI. So for example, when we depend on FDI, India is also investing in other economies. So ideally, India is investing in the friendly economies where business is allowed. Yes. So if we cannot have another refinery industry in India, because a refinery industry is also polluting. So can we invest in other economies that are favorable to Indian investment on this front? So if we do not have adequate storage capacity, and we are reaching to the optimal level of storage capacity during the low price of petroleum, can we invest in the friendly economies and increase our storage capability for the future consumption as an inventory?
Yes.
Because that is how we can probably correct our current account deficit.
True.
And if we can allow firms to invest in this segment, then what happens is, again, I go back to the employment potential. So we are coming up with new employment potentials in these segments. So the government has been keen on rising the excise duties and tax on the auto fuels, right? That is another issue that has come up wherever the global oil prices fall in order to supplement the revenue collections. So there are a couple of things that we have to clearly understand. That means the first is the oil prices definitely come down, but the income of the government has also come down, right? The tax collection has come down. So ideally there is a question why there is a divergence between the oil prices falling and the petrol prices increasing in India, because there is no tax collections and less tax collection during the pandemic time. Probably even if with a low crude oil price, the government is increasing particularly for as a tax into the auto fuels, so that it can probably manage the income side of the government to operate for this pandemic time. So therefore, this the reduction in the reduction in the petroleum has definitely a positive impact for economies like India. However, we have to be very quick in terms of policy making and adapting to the policy to increase our inventories, right? Because it's a very short-term phenomena. Again, I
Yes.
repeat, it is not a demand-led thing. It's a demand-led thing, because the economic activity has shut down, the demand for fuels have come down. Import dependent economies on oil are not demanding higher oil reserves, and therefore there is a slowdown. That doesn't mean it is going to be stay for a long time.
Seriously.
And this is the time India should act quickly so that it can correct the fiscal deficit point of view and the current deficit point of view.
Seriously, because
Plus, yeah,
no, no, sir, continue.
yeah, and plus we can also have an inventory that can be consumed tomorrow, even if there is a possibility of conflict, which is happening today when we talk between India and China. There is a conflict, right? Now, these conflicts are also related to the oil market. See, once the conflict is happening, then obviously import of India's import of oil will increase. Assuming a possibility of a larger conflict, India would like to have more reserves, and thereby it is going to change the economic dynamics of oil market.
It means we should capitalize on the low prices and we should build a surplus so that we can use it later.
We must, yes, we must capitalize on the low price mechanism, and we must think for the future. And also, we can encourage our firms to go and invest in other economies like China does, right? So that the friendly economies, because yes, India has been investing in most some of the African economies today, and particularly there are certain petroleum companies which are investing in Africa. Can you have more investment there?
Yes.
So that we are having a control over the oil market also, not necessarily only the dependency on the oil market.
Indeed. Since you were expert in energy sector and you are currently working on the energy research and other things, one important question comes in my mind is distribution companies, Discom, what we popularly known as, and they have been a significant strain on Indian power sector. Their poor financial performance has been weighing down the entire sector with their inability to pay power generators on time, manage their losses, and iron out other inefficiencies. How can the efficiency of Discoms be increased, or is there any available alternative?
See, the Discom. The interesting news that came sometime back, if I correctly tell you, is Andhra Pradesh took certain steps on Discom. Right? They probably wanted to help Discom. And the distribution companies, see, look at, we do not have a systematic approach of the distribution companies across the states. Each state has their different way of distribution companies, power distribution companies, right? Now, if you go back, then you can actually understand that Odisha was one of the first to privatize or come up with a model of PPP for the distribution companies. It divided into 4 zones. And these 4 zones are ideally based on the geographical location, taking some of the districts. Now, the first point is, can we ask or can we have a policy to make these companies more technologically advanced? That's the first thing that we have to do, because technology advancement is the demand for today, because we cannot afford higher, transmission and distribution loss.
Yes.
I mean, till today we use a metal which is cheaper to distribute energy. Right? The only reason is because the metal is cheaper.
Yes.
Until today, except metros, the energy is distributed on pole to pole. The metros use the earth as a system, the small town use pole to pole distribution system. So what is happening is that technologically we are not advanced in the electricity distribution, that is leading to a larger amount of T&D loss.
Yeah.
That is one. Second, it's my personal opinion that electricity is never considered as a market good by the households in India.
Indeed.
Right? I mean, many of us probably never counted that as a food basket, in the food basket. We pay much larger amount of our budget to probably non-food expenditure, and we don't even actually count. But the moment we get the electricity bill, we are very scared of it. The reason is behavioral wise, we are not ready to accept that this should be also included in the food basket. Because historically, many consumers never paid their dues. It's very complex problem. So what happens is the production happens in one hand, distribution companies are there to distribute. It reaches to the third party, which is the consumers. Now, if you look at the consumer segment, these are, agriculture is a consumer, transport, industry, and households.
Households, yes.
Now, you can regulate the industrial sector because they demand more electricity for their production and for their value chain system. You are giving on subsidy or free of cost to the farmers. In between is the household sector, right? For electricity. Now, majority of household never got electricity connection. That's what your previous question was there. Can we kind of, power for all? Now, within the limited segment of the household that are consuming electricity, if everybody do not pay back, then the companies don't earn their,
Revenue.
their revenues. Why it happens? Because technologically the distribution companies are not sound enough. If you look at the employment also, what happens is they do not have adequate good employment systems where you can tap everything. For example, why telephone segment is efficiently working? Why electricity segment doesn't work properly? I mean, we are the same users, right? User doesn't change. We are paying telephone bill every month, but people don't pay electricity bill every month. And of course, we need to have level. We need to introduce the private sectors in this, because academic research also, if you look at the productivity of companies, have actually gone up when they become either in a PPP mode or in a private investment mode. The public sector entity have social security, yes, but they fail to kind of come up with a higher productivity. So if we want to make distribution companies productive, we need to invest, and that investment should come from the private sector. So I will not support in terms of a bailouting kind of a stuff, right? Because they are poor economically, let government bail out every time. Because these companies should also look at their balance sheet and tell us why they are facing the problem periodically.
Yes.
I mean, if it's from the problem from the end user, then we can control end user, we can regulate end user, right? Or if it's a problem with the companies themselves, then they have to look at the factor and the composition of the production system, like the factors. So every time the state should not get into bailout, but rather they should tell that you have to become self-sufficient. This is what again, Prime Minister Modi has recently talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat, right?
Yes.
So every entity should become Atmanirbhar in this case.
Indeed, because since we launched Uday bond scheme, again the strain on states' fiscal deficit, there was a problem
Yes.
again, like resurfacing again. So that's the problem. Fundamental problem is there, and we need to correct that.
We need to look at, and the problem is, when we talk about efficiency of discoms also, right? Now we have to talk about three types of efficiencies, like allocative efficiency, cost efficiency, and technological efficiency. So probably somebody has to do a research to find out where discom is getting wrong, whether it's on the cost side or the allocative side or on the technological side. Right? Technological support can be given, but if it's an allocative problem, then it should be an internal
Inter-
dynamism of the companies to restructure themselves. So there is a need. I mean, there is a need for a larger restructuring of these companies to figure out how they can become more efficient and more productive.
Very
And
true.
of course, technology is more important because we have to very carefully invest on technology, not only in this sector but almost in all the sectors.
All this.
Because we cannot stay 10 years back in terms of technology when we are talking about a futuristic India, which is going to become a 5 trillion economy.
This is the need of the coming decade. Yes, sir. We
Yeah,
see the
yeah.
concept of cross subsidy being deployed by Indian government in many sectors like railways, energy. Do you think it harms the competitiveness of the industrial and commercial sector?
Yeah, it's interesting. No, this also linked with the previous question, which is on the discounts, right? Because uh,
Yes, that's
they are predominantly the beneficiaries of the cross subsidies, right? So the first thing is we must understand what is cross subsidy, right? Because many a times we just miss the definitional part of cross subsidy. So cross subsidy is nothing but a group of consumers paying more than the general cost of supply, and the surplus is used to subsidize the provision to other groups at a price that is lower than the cost of supply to the subsidized group. So what is technically happening? One segment pays high, then the market price, and the surplus is being distributed or redistributed to the uh, other group which cannot pay to the market price. So ideally what is happening, it is we are bringing it to the equilibrium point of market price. So if you look at in a straight line kind of a stuff and then tilt it, then you see this large section is given by as a surplus, and this same surplus comes back to the other set of people who probably are not able to pay in the market price. And effectively, you gave the example of the railways. I'll come back to electricity, but you give again. But railway is quite interesting. For example, we increase the cost to the goods and services. That's the trade
great.
of goods and services, which are transported from point A to point B using railway services, and we reduce it for the passenger freight. Let's think about it. When we increase the transportation cost of goods and services, doesn't have indirect effect on the consumers,
Obviously, it is having yes.
right? In the circular flow of economy, see a typical private firm entity will has a motive of profit maximization. Now, this profit maximization will not allow the firm to price at a lower cost. Now, when your goods and service cost is going up for the transport from the railways, that will come as a factor cost, because you are increasing, you are adding extra delta in the transportation for goods and services. So what is happening is directly the consumer feels that I'm paying less, but indirectly the other goods and services or the food basket price is going up. That doesn't mean I'm not in favor of cross subsidy for the transport, because yes, transport is important and cross subsidy should be there definitely for a specific homogeneous segment of the population.
Yes.
When we talk about railways, can we come up with a policy of subsidy for only the below poverty line population? Right?
Yes.
Why transport is important for them? Because they're migrant labor, they commute between cities, they find jobs. Many of them do not have permanent day jobs, right? Therefore, what happens? They depend on the temporary jobs. Therefore, they use train as a major facility for transportation. So can we have a disaggregate level of pricing mechanism like we have, we have the air conditioned price, slipper price, and other price, but they are basically based on the comfort.
Yes.
So if you look at the price mechanism, they are basically based on the comfort of the facility provided for you, to you. The price in sleeper is more than the general ticket because the space is larger compared to the general ticket, right? It's the space and the comfort given in the railways, that is where the pricing changes. It's fair enough. That means is the willingness to buy the ticket. It is not the ability to buy the ticket. Now, can we redesign the price mechanism in terms of ability to buy the ticket? And these people who are able to buy the ticket should not get the cross subsidy.
Okay.
Because that is unnecessarily, see, what happens is they are enjoying the surplus. But in an aggregate form, what is happening, that personal benefit is not translated in the economic activities or economic growth. That's one. Now, if you come to the electricity sector again, right, the cross subsidy part, what happens is the industrial hubs are predominantly given, they pay the market price. Now, it's interesting to look at the industrial sector also. Now, if you look at the industrial sector in India, we have organized manufacturing, unorganized manufacturing. We also have traditional manufacturing which never registered. So we have registered manufacturing, non-registered manufacturing. We also have large firms, small firms, medium firms, and tiny firms. So within the industry setup, majority of power rebate is given to the MSMEs, that is the micro, medium, small enterprises, because the government of India want them to invest. Because government of India want them to make a business hub so that people can invest, and a favorable electricity subsidy can basically drive people to invest in economy. So within the industry segment, what happens? The large firms pay more electricity bill, which is translated to the small firms. But the question is, till what point we should give the benefit to the small firms? So the small firms should not stay as small firms forever, right?
Yes.
The ideal goal is the small firm will become large. And the tiny will become micro, micro will become small. So instead of a static policy framework, we definitely need a dynamic policy framework which should look at each of these segments. If you look at the household segment also, what happens? Or the sectoral segment, what happens? Agriculture electricity is almost free. That is translated to other sectors. Or probably household sector is paying more, and we have the pricing mechanism which says that if you consume from 0 to 100, you pay this much, and then from peak energy pricing system we have, right? So we have differentiated energy, and that's an interesting thing. We should have that kind of electricity pricing, so that what happens, the consumers are actually careful about their consumption pattern. So it helps in two ways. The demand doesn't go up because you understand that you are paying high tariff if you cross, let's say, 100 units. So we can redistribute and go back to your first question of power to all.
Yes.
Right? The second is the distribution companies are also not going to face something like a California electricity crisis. Right? The third thing is, if the consumers are aware of the price mechanism, then they can easily come up with a perfect basket of their budgetary allocation. And whenever the cross subsidies are given, either in electricity or in the transport sector, it should be informed to the consumers. The consumers must know about it. Then coming to your third component of the equation, which is the competitiveness of the firms. Of course, it has a link with the competitiveness. Because if a firm would like to enjoy the cross subsidy, they may not compete to become large. Or These cross subsidies are also geographical in nature. For example, the cross subsidies, except the central government cross subsidies, each state government has differentiated cross subsidies. You look at the PDS, public distribution system. Some states sell rice for 1 rupee a kilo. That means assuming the market price for rice is 50 rupees, the same quality rice,
Yes.
right? Or 35 rupees. Let's reduce a little bit, 35 rupees. 34 rupees of cross subsidy is given to one segment. Now that segment should be informed the cross subsidy pattern through local news, local channels, and local information system, so that we must. So what happens is we must realize the subsidy given by the governments. See, interestingly, what happens, because we are all now living in an age where um, uh, the informations are spreaded through social networks.
Yes.
So people who believe the current government is doing great will have come up with the statistics of subsidy given in everything, right? For example, the increase in oil prices happened because state also takes GST, central government takes GST, profit to the firm, and then the crude oil price. Now, these classification are not known to everybody because information has become asymmetric, and we have to somehow help all of us to increase the uh, spread of information in a correct platform. So cross subsidy will sometime involve, lesser competition among the firms, because the firms will get cheaper raw materials, and in this case the raw material is definitely energy, right?
Yes.
So when you get energy at a cheaper cost, you probably don't want to become bigger because you have to pay more.
True.
Or indirectly, it's like the income tax, right?
Yes.
If you are in X bracket, you pay less. If you are in X plus 1 bracket, you pay more. Now it's up to you whether you want to jump from X to X plus 1.
Yes. It's a progressive in nature. Yes.
Yes. So I mean, even and one more thing I must tell you, unfortunately, from 2004 onwards only, we came up with something called an energy statistics of India as a separate handbook. Right. Before that, it was clubbed with other departmental notes. Now, Government of India should periodically come up with energy policies. That is highly required at this point. See, look at the Japanese case. Japanese government releases their policies every week, modified policies every week, in a brief discussion of 1 to 2 pages on what should Japan do for the electricity or energy policies. So we cannot have those 1 year, 5 year policies once and then freeze, right? Now things has to be dynamic in nature, and government should always think of dissemination of knowledge. So, for instance, when you started the question that electricity for all or energy for all, how many of us know about this policy?
Yes. Very few.
Right? Now we have the platforms where government can actually tell these things, that this is what we are doing in terms of become a competitive India. So the cost subsidy are given because there is an unequal distribution in terms of the production system and other things, right? To make it a flat system, we want to give subsidies so that everybody should engage in the economic activity. Doesn't mean that the cross subsidies should be there forever. Neither in the transport, railways, nor in the power sector.
Indeed.
But yes, for that, so one interesting thing is, again I come back to technology and investment in this case. If we can come up with productive technology to produce goods and services at a cheaper cost, we may get away from these cross subsidy patterns. So today the factor cost is higher because the production cost is higher.
Production cost is.
Can we reduce the production cost?
Indeed.
We can reduce the production cost only through technology intervention.
Again, the efficiency of question. Yes.
Of course. I mean, see, today when Japan is talking about society 5.0, right? We have not even reached to industry 4.0.
Yes.
Because, except automobile industry, which is little bit advanced in manufacturing. Majority of other industries are still using a traditional way of production system.
Yes.
So I don't want to sound that I want to displace labor in this case. We definitely have to increase employability. But technology can help us in producing surplus and engaging with international trade. I mean, during this pandemic and after this pandemic, what is happening is India as an economy doesn't want to depend on Chinese firms. 49, 51 companies, which are predominantly IT based companies, are basically controlled and they are not allowed in India today because of what has happened recently. But if you look at the economy in terms of the production system, are we capable of doing producing goods and services? Yes, we are, but we need a good policy for that. Like, can we develop a semiconductor industry in India? A large semiconductor industry, because you open your iPhone, you open your mobile phone, or now we are talking in the two different locations we are using computers. Majority of the products are actually produced in different locations because today at the age of multinational enterprises, no economy produces single goods and services.
Yes, indeed.
Right?
Very
Even
true.
Boeing is not produced in one country.
Yes.
Boeing is produced from multiple countries. What is the reason for this? The reason is each economy has an advantage of becoming efficient in one of the components.
Yes.
So you get the best brain out of that and you get the best technology from everywhere, and then you produce a good which is cheaper, efficient, and best to the production system.
Very
So
true.
in this supply chain, can India become one of the major competitors?
That's what economic survey has also said. This year's economic. It's
But but
network
but but
product.
for that, what happens? We have to first look at the employment crisis, which is of course happening, and also the employment crisis has become worsened due to the pandemic. I mean, this is kind of an extra burden to us, and we must get into industry 4.0, make our industry more competitive, make our industry more technologically advanced, encourage people to invest in business and invest in industrial activities, not necessarily depend on the traditional so-called public sector jobs and public sector entities. Because see, the simple reason is this: public sector entity is good because it is a social security.
Yes.
Now, can we become entrepreneurs? Can you invest in business? Can we actually help India to grow in terms of, getting employed or creating employment for others? Now, if we have an investment, technologically sophisticated investment in, goods and services, then probably we will get away with the complex nature of cross subsidy because the factor cost itself will come down.
Welcome. Yes.
And it also applies for the agriculture sector as well.
Seriously, it's a case of each and every sector. Okay, sir. It's a very informative session, sir, and it was very wonderful and eye-opening session for all of us to make energy sector very efficient. At last, sir, I would seek some few words of encouragement for ecoholics.
Yeah, Ecoholics is actually one of the recent development that I came across in social media, and Ecoholic is trying to engage itself largely to educate economics and largely to educate economics with technology. I come back again to technology, right? Because Ecoholic is not using the standard pattern of teaching in a restricted boundary, but it is extending its service freely to everybody who want to learn economics. May it be writing, in a competitive exam, or may it be writing net GRE or whatever it is in economics. Ecoholic is there to support, and that is indeed a great thing that you have started, and you are competing yourself to make it a larger success in terms of an accepted framework for economic understanding. Given the Digital India initiative today, probably almost all of us have internet connectivity. Ecoholic can help people to learn economics, not only for the graduate students or the undergrad students, but also for people who want to know what is about economics, what are the fundamentals of economics. Can we read a newspaper, for instance? Can we understand a newspaper? If I give you a business line, can you make head and tail of that? Or so this is where Ecoholic is really contributing a lot. I wish a lot of people will subscribe to your YouTube channels and other social networks.
Thank you.
And of course, I mean, on a very lighter note, because we don't have TikTok, can we have Ecoholic app downloaded in our systems,
Yes.
right? And can we educate ourselves? Can we engage with ourselves? Can we talk to, Mr. Srivastava, ask some questions, whatever doubt we have in a fundamental difficulties in understanding economics? Can we write in a forum? Can we engage ourselves in discussing about the pros and cons of economics, policies, politics of economics, etc., etc.? So definitely Ecoholic is one of the forefront in that, and it has multiple footprint in all the social medias, starting from LinkedIn to Facebook and others, of course YouTube, and also it gives almost free education to everybody who has an internet connection.
Yes, sir, indeed.
So
This is our initiative, and we provide free doubt session. Anything, any student is having any doubt, we provide free doubt clearing facility on our app, and there are mock tests and other computer examinations facilities. So
yes, see, for instance, if you look at the, again, I go back to the employment problem, right? So, anybody who writes competitive exam, economics is a must.
yes,
Now, if economics is a must, then why don't ecoholics should be must, right? So people can get educated from ecoholic, and I mean, instead of asking somebody who probably cannot answer the question, why don't we ask to the expert who is sitting there to answer your questions digitally?
yes, sir.
And using social distance. In fact, at this pandemic time, using social distance, we can ask questions. We can get, as you correctly said, you have also doubt clearing sessions. So I wish many students, not only students, in general, everybody should kind of subscribe to your channels, become part of your app, and replace the, of course they don't have the TikTok now, so they can install your app and get educated from your initiative. I wish all the best. I'm personally very much satisfied with your initiative in making economics for all,
Yes.
right? I mean, which is a great initiative, in fact, because economics as a subject has to be understood very carefully by all of us. It's a science, it's a scientific subject, it's a logical, rational subject with adequate quantitative techniques and mathematics involved with computer science. So this subject should be understood by most of us. So we come up with good economists in India. In fact, there was a question in between in another forum, why Indian economists are not kind of, excelling in India. But the same person goes to the US, educates in the US, and gets a Nobel Prize.
Yes.
I'm talking about Professor Banerjee for that case. He's an Indian. He's born in West Bengal, right? The reason is many of us do not understand economics, and Ecoholic can reach to households and tell what is economics all about.
Yes.
In fact, your sessions with many eminent scholars, which I saw in your videos, people can actually get informed that how you can reach to these big people who are not accessible by most of them.
Yes.
Or we cannot ask any question to these people, but we can get answers through you. So therefore, your first question was power to all. So I end up with saying that economics to all is being done by you.
Thank you.
So I really wish all the best. I'm really happy to be part of this conversation, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I will also circulate this information among my circle, my students, so that they can also become a part of Ecoholic. They can also contribute if they want to contribute, whatever way they can contribute to your forum, and become it's a digital format. It's the most democratic format that somebody can look at.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful and kind words. And it's my pleasure to have you on my show. It was a very wonderful and informative session, and we look forward in future to do that more. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.